Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries here present. My name is Larry Akimbo. Please do not confuse my looks. This is supposed to be a session with the founding fathers and, those that joined the NES30 journey several years ago. I'm relatively new to the process, so I'm just here to direct proceedings. Thank you very much, panelists. We want to, as they say, go down memory lane. Mr. Dr. Suleiman, do you want to start? Just some background, what you and your cohort saw way back 1993, just for the benefit of the audience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. And this will be my 30th edition of the summit. I was here in 1993. And I think I was front and center of the first 13 editions of the summit. Now, the organization that is organizing the summit that you have today didn't exist in 1993. Most of the work were done by the offices of the key founders that were mentioned in the movies, in the script. And that's the Kramer, Arthur Anderson, Faisal El Khalil, 7up, somebody from UAC, I think somebody from, Diamond Band didn't exist then. I can't remember what Pascal was doing. But basically, we marshaled the resources that were used to run the summit. We shipped all the photocopiers and all the presentation slides and so on from Lagos. And Dick's assistant, a guy called Emmanuel Uvo. And Pascal assistant, a guy called Biodun, I can't remember his surname, they were the secretary, they were the hub of what held the NSG together. So I would say we've come a long way. What motivated NESG basically was the fact that the country was not working as it should work. And also, that was in the era when the philosophy was that the public sector controlled what they call the commanding heights of the economy. Everything from airways to ports to everything was in government hands, but they weren't working. So the whole idea of the summit was to put together a group of people to dialogue with government and basically bring government to the point of view that, the government really doesn't have a business running businesses, and therefore all of it should be entrusted to the private sector. It was a modest beginning. I think it was helped by the fact that, like it was said in the video clip, we had a unitary government by the military. And once you got the attention and the confidence of the head of state at that time, the chance that your recommendation will be taken and implemented were very high. So I would say, so a lot of the reforms that you heard were basically ideas that were initiated at the summit. So the whole idea of privatization, commercialization, liberalization, and so on, we started from the summit. When the president announced the end of subsidy last year, I was telling somebody that finally it's been done, that we've been canvassing this thing for over 30 years. Somebody reminded me that, no, it wasn't, we've been canvassing for over 40 years. It reminded me that there was a presentation that was put together almost 40 years ago, we were talking about this same thing. Then it wasn't called subsidy, it was called appropriate pricing of petroleum products. So that just gives you an idea of the issues we've been battling with over the years and the role the private sector, under the umbrella of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group has played. We've come a long way. We've seen a succession of generations in leadership and so on. The thing is expanded, and I think we're ever more influential, ever more present in the economic management of this country than before. So I would say from the point of view of the vision of the founding fathers, I think we've made a lot of progress, and we need to be congratulated.
Thank you very much, sir. Engineer Mansour, I'll come to you. I remember when I started my affiliation with the NESG, you were, well, then we used to call you DG,
Yes.
Director General.
Yes, so-called DG.
And then later it was changed that, to ensure that separation, that it's not a government entity, and then now it's the leader of this NES is called the CEO. Then I know that after your sojourn as DG, as you were then called, you went to serve in government. Did you, what were the first, you served as DG, we canvassed a lot of reforms here, and then I think it was the ICRC you went to run. Can you tell us about that transition and what impact you were able to make in government?
Well, thank you very much, Landry. I think, let me start by saying that one of the things about NESG, and particularly the summit process, that I think we must always bear in mind, is that as an institution, it has given this country a model of how institutions should be sustained. Because stability, institutional stability, is so key to any development. And the NESG has been sustained, and it has actually grown to a large extent over these 30 years, despite many obstacles. And I believe that if for nothing else, it provides a model for our country, because without strong institutions that remain resilient, that continue to move in the direction that they were set up to move in, I think we will continue to go around in circles, which unfortunately I think is what has been happening, at least in the political domain. Now, coming back to ICR, in fact, this is what happened. I think sometime in 1994 or 1996, the NESG organized an international conference on infrastructure development and the role of the private sector in that regard. And we came out with a strong recommendation that we must set up an institution that will provide a framework for the private sector to be brought into the financing and operation and provision of infrastructure services. That recommendation was obviously contained in the summit recommendations, as has always happened, as I'm sure will happen today or this time. And at the end of the process, the recommendation was that we should set up a guiding policy and a guiding legislation and an institution that will anchor the process of public-private partnerships. This was what was submitted, and it was submitted, it was given, I think, to the government of the day. Unfortunately, I think it was given to Obasanjo's government at the end of the tenure of that government, probably around 1997? 2006, 2007. Now, Obasanjo left and nothing much happened at the time, until I think the Yar'Adua administration came. And at the end, at that time, there was controversy over the issue of power, the power sector. How much investments was made, where did that investment come from, and why did we not have any impact of that? And I believe that somebody must have told or advised the Yar'Adua administration that, well, this is the problem. You need to bring private sector into the process so that they can also invest. Not only will you expand the scope of investment that will happen, but also you will have a private sector agency that will now be to attract, ensure, because it's the investment, that the thing goes on. So I was actually just coming to Abuja at that time, and the chief economic advisor then, I think Mr. Tanimu Yakubu, asked me if I knew anything about that recommendation. I said, yes, it was made by the NESG about a year or 2 years ago. He said, oh, good, then please come and see the president. So he invited me to go and see Yar'Adua. And he asked me, are you familiar with this issue of public-private partnership? I said, yes, Your Excellency. This is how it happened. He put his hand inside some drawer and pulled out a copy of the act, because an act was actually, a bill was enacted into law, providing for the setting up of the ICRC, Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission. And he handed it over to me. He said, are you aware of this? I said, yes, Your Excellency. He said, very good. Then go and implement it. So basically, that is how ICRC came about. And I think this is consistent with what we've seen in terms of other reforms, the pension reform, the power sector reform, the privatization, commercialization. All this started in some way or were initiated or were provoked, if you like, by discussions and consultations of the NES type, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. So I have always said that, look, people may complain that the NESG process is long-winded, it's a talk shop, but frankly, many of the key reforms that have succeeded or that have made a difference are reforms that were either initiated or indeed recommended by the NESG. And these talk shops we complain about. Just imagine what would happen if this talk shop did not happen at all. In fact, there would have been very little in terms of policy development and economic growth processes that followed those policy developments. So to a large extent, I believe that this NES system, I think Dick Kramer just doesn't, in fact, refers it to the NES system, the Nigerian Economic Summit system, has been extremely, extremely critical to the little progress. We may not be happy, we are not there, we are not where we are yet, but the progress that has been made, I think it has been to a large extent impacted by the positive contributions of the Nigerian Economic Summit process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Engineer Mansour. Dr. Foko Mogui, so the common refrain is, oh, we talk, it's a talk shop and all that. The other day, I overheard, I was in a little gathering where Mr. Felicia Phillips was saying that, yes, people say we talk, but he says, thank God that we've not stopped talking. Because I guess he was looking at what's the alternative, really. Now, a lot of reform initiatives have been canvassed in this very room over the last 30 years. You had the opportunity to serve in government also in what I would call one of the cash cows of the economy, not a very popular one. Tell us, as someone of the private sector extraction who went to serve in government, how hard was reform in the FIRS?
Okay, first of all, thank you for the question. I know you're asking about how hard the reform is, but I want to also go back to memory lane for the NESG, because I see that there's also a connection to also discussing reform. When my boss, Dotun, talked about the founders bringing in resources, I was one of those resources. Dotun and Dick were my bosses in Arthur Anderson & Co. And working with the firm to help support the formation of the NESG and also to make it happen, taught me as a person the value of inclusiveness, the value of stakeholder engagement. And I'd like to add, and maybe that'll be the third thing I'd like to stress, and then bring it back to the question you're asking, the value of the process to achieve the goal you want to achieve. And still going through memory lane on those attributes, I started off, and some of us, I'm sure, in the room, were rapporteurs at sessions, putting reports together, working late nights. That was characteristic anyway of working at Arthur Anderson. So hard work was already, in a sense, part of our DNA. Working late nights, being focused and having a purpose of what you wanted to achieve and being energized by it was part of our DNA. even when I left Arthur Andersen to set up Ristral, and the idea of the NESG facilitating the process of Vision 2010, Dick came back to again recruit me to help in driving the technical facilitation of Vision 2010. That taught me also the value of relationships, the value of continuity, and the value of just ensuring that you put a team in place to drive whatever you want to achieve. And in driving and facilitating the Vision 2010 process, working with my bosses, that was an incredible experience. Because we were able to, we started with a smaller group and gradually widened to make it a very inclusive group. And the process from 1996 to 1997 of putting Vision 2010 in place is one I will never forget. We formed great relationships, great networks, and we came out with a vision across states, across the country, across gender, across age. We had the young, we had the old, we had all of that. And by the time we ended, there was this feeling of energy that we wanted to make this happen. And we all came together as one. I also learned from the failure of the process to put in place the Vision 2010 Implementation Committee. We actually started that process, but it didn't happen. But I learned from that. So in coming to run the Federal Inland Revenue Service, again, the recruitment process itself, and being given a blank sheet of paper to drive reforms that had also been started by my predecessor, was an incredible opportunity. So for me, it was really all about the purpose. An opportunity to develop our country, an opportunity to raise the revenue required. And so it wasn't about how difficult it was. It wasn't about how tough it was. It was about how do we pull everybody together toward that common purpose. So it was an exciting 8 years, filled with stress, frustration. I must say, even with all the skills I'd learned, I remember calling my mom some 2 weeks after to say, I never expected this, I'd never worked in government. And she said, whoever told you life was easy? So go do it. And I think that kind of nudge helps when you're in a reform agenda, a reform process of having people around you, that support network to ensure you stay focused on the goal. But it's a support network that should be telling you the honest truth. Should be telling you whether you're going right, where you're not going, watching your back. But most importantly, you need that network. And Vision 2010 came to bear because right there in the National Assembly, you had people who had worked on the Vision 2010 process. Right there in government, because it was a collaboration between private sector and government, you had the people who had worked in government, or who had worked with us before. And so, again, in reforms, it helps that you have people that can speak to your consistency as a person. That, okay, if somebody is just maybe bad-mouthing you at the back, to say, no, that's just the way this person is, it's not personal. Reforms is a lot of work. It takes time, but it's a process. It's important to understand, and that process starts with you believing that it can be done. That process starts with you, continues with you having a clear purpose of why you want to do it. Those are the things that will surmount any hurdles you may face and whatever challenges I will face. That purpose leading to you having a very clear plan and strategy of where you want to go. And that strategy being bought into by all stakeholders. That's also very important. Mapping out those stakeholders And there were many such engagements. That you do it does not mean that they actually buy in. Because as one will find when the Federal Revenue Service Establishment Act was passed, some of the stakeholders were engaged with were actually the ones that were now saying, they never believed the act would be passed, and so created bottlenecks. But the process helped. The process helped. And so it should be done. Engaging stakeholders, ensuring that they understand, because then you have that as, in a sense, your evidence that they were involved. It's better that you are dealing with somebody who's objecting the situation, having involved them, than when they can hold against you that they were not involved, because that will always be used as an excuse. Again, the process of reform is a lot of discipline. Regular, weekly tracking of those goals. In spite of people saying your meetings are too long, in spite of people saying that, why is she always calling meetings? In spite of people resisting, because what you will now find is once you stay focused on tracking those goals week after week and changing them where you find those goals need to be changed, ultimately, it's a very fulfilling experience because you do achieve what you want to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I like the fact that you took us down memory lane again. And before you told us your own story as somebody who then got the opportunity to implement some of the reforms that we have canvassed here. Mr. Laoye Jayola, for those who may not know, he's the immediate past CEO of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. And also for the benefit of our audience, yes, you see the NESG in its interventions operates along what I would say four prongs: as a dialogue partner, as a connector, as an intervener, and as a watchdog. I also know, sir, that over the years, we have deepened and expanded the scope of our engagement across board. Along these four prongs, we would like for you to share with the audience the other things that NESG does, particularly during your tenure, sir. Apart from the organizing this beautiful summit every year, what are those things that happen between one summit and the other? Specifically, I'm talking things like the policy commissions and, those things that really elevated NESG to be the world-class think tank that it now is. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Larry. Again, I'll pick up from what Dotun said. So, meetings, secretariats, all with people in their offices. So when I was captured to take over as the CEO from Frank, who was going into politics, I was already on the board. But we had a dilemma because Frank must go and contest, and we hadn't gotten who was going to take over. And I said, okay, fine, let me just do an interim work of 6 months and make sure we set it up, and then I will go back to my private sector work. But the first shock I had was that all the good work that NESG had done was in people's laptop. No. So the first thing we did was, how can we ensure that we have a secretariat that is gotten all these records and dematerialize them and make sure that we have records? And so I had to go to Decreamer, everybody, to make sure we get all the records in. But again, like Larry said, we're at a point where people felt, don't mind them, the elite Lagos group. So for me, it was, how do we democratize the NESD the more? So it was more about gender inclusion, generational inclusion, and geographical inclusion. And so the first thing we did was, let's not talk only with the executive arm of government. How can we begin to talk with the legislature, realizing that a number of the hindrances to ease of doing business were loaded in our laws. So that gave birth to what we call NASBA. NASBA was a means of both dialogue, but more involving intervention. So we started NASBA, that's National Assembly Business and Environment Roundtable. Today it's under the NES30 Center. And we got involved in laws, and one of the landmark law I cannot forget that we had to get through was the Company and Allied Matters. And it was a big volume. The National Assembly said, we're not going to sign it. How do I do a 900-page? But then we sat with them, and so we got all the exchanges we have. And therefore, we took major area of infrastructure. So legislations, how do we work together? How do we build laws that meet the needs of the economy? But we didn't stop at national level. We then went to work with, we created what they call a SABA, State Assembly Business Environment. So we're working with the state's legislatures, and then with the Governors Forum. So all of those things are issues we picked up in terms of democratizing it, getting it deeper, and reaching out to not only the executive, but even the legislature. And we began some work even with the judiciary. So that we put all under a national center. But you see, we didn't realize that. For us to have, with democracy, there are a number of people that are influencers, always trying to chase issues. But some of those influences were not born out of data, were not born out of evidence. So we decided that it was time to strengthen evidence at the NESG. So we worked a lot in our research. We built a macroeconomic model in terms of reaching and working with people in government all through the year, right? And then we then decided to set up what we have today. Our Policy Innovation Center is one of the best we have in Africa today, in about how do we use data? How do we begin to use policy to influence the way work is done? But beyond that, we then decided to bring the next generation. Because at that point, most of us that were doing the work were getting old. And so we felt, look, if we don't pass this on, we're going to have a problem. So we set up the Bridge Fellowship for the NESG, which opened the door for younger people. And then we reach out to Nigerians and those in the diaspora. I mean, so today, our activities, you're surprised to know that Nigerians in diaspora get involved in what we do, deep research work, and we have a younger people running through a number of work we do. Lande, you said, so what do we do between summits? So as a matter of engagement, we have what we call policy commissions. And this is a policy commission that was set up by our founding fathers. It's an interaction between the public sector and the private sector. So it's always co-shared by a private sector lead and a public sector lead. And so all the work we do during summit, one of the things we do at first is we distill it. Once you do the big summarized paper, we distill it into sectors, we distill it into different work, and we give it to these policy commissions and say, now take it. Let's just give us 3 major things we want to implement in there. And then we give support. We have volunteers. And one of the things that I have loved about the NESG that I work with is the use of volunteers. And I've gone around other think tanks that will ask and said, are you sure those people really volunteer? I said, they volunteer. They pay to serve. And they don't care who takes the glory. That they just come in, the work, and the work, and the work. And so all the work we do around any support we do by government, just sending people in there. So the policy commission work all through the year. And their work is to ensure we implement decisions reached at summit. And you know what we do? When we are doing a new summit, we look at those things that have not been done, bring them on board. because you don't expect them to be done within just 1 year. You carry over, we review again, and we refresh. And there are some issues that we carry for almost 4 or 5 years. So in terms of evidence, we've done a lot of about building evidence. The research is strong, the models are there, and we make it available to government at no cost. The other thing we've done is that we have expanded our stream of volunteers, and we've built models, we've built platforms that allow for better interactions. And then intervention. Where the need arises, we've had to second people in government to see through process at the expense of a private sector. We just say, okay, you need this, okay, you go there, and we'll pay the funds in there and do all of those work. So I've seen NESG grown. I've seen more younger people come in. In fact, one of the joy I have is to go and I see the young people, taking on this job and trying to do it a lot better than we did it. And it's only 30 years. I was at one conference. It's an African think tank conference. And the chair just said, she's from the legislature, and said, all of you people come here, you only deal with executive. Nobody have anything about what they do at the legislature. I just pulled out all the work we did through NASPA. And they said, you mean you do this? I said, yes. We even are involved in the process of lawmaking. But I must confess, it's not an easy job. Some of those things are accepted, some are not. I recall the minister sitting with me and saying, if only we implement 30% of what we have in here, Nigeria won't be the same. But you see, you don't get angry as I work as advocates. You just sit down in the room and keep talking and keep talking and don't get tired. I can't forget Dick Rima, who told me then and said, Jai, you know what? You must always be in the room because your work is to be an advocate, not an activist. And I believe that someday, sometime, we'll keep work and we'll get there.
Thank you very much. I would say that you did not toot your own horn enough. You did not mention all of the good work that you started with development partners, MacArthur Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and grants we received to do important work across the country. And I don't know whether you sidestepped this one. You also didn't mention the work that the NESD does as a watchdog, right? We like to dialogue, we like to intervene, we like to connect, different stakeholders. But not only can we bark, we can also bite, if need be. So in time past, we've had cause to issue fairly scathing and strongly worded.
2020.
Yes.
A 14-point.
Exactly.
That almost cost me my life, but it
yes.
were here.
I mean, there was a lot of blowback.
Get Nigeria right.
Yes, there was a lot of blowback, but the institution withstood, the pressure, and we are better for it. So, as a watchdog, not only can we bark, we can bite, if need be. Mrs. Wanu Adetayo.
Yes, please.
Your questions are two-pronged. I know you started your journey, you're a board member today, a member of the board of the NESG, but I also know you started your journey on this floor as a rapporteur. For somebody out there who needs that motivation and encouragement, very briefly, please tell us your journey.
Okay.
From the floor, sorry, the second part of my question. Mr. Jayola mentioned policy commission. Now, for the benefit of the audience, Mrs. Wani Adetayo chairs the board committee on policy commissions. So I'd like for you also to tell us about the important work that the policy commissions have done and continue to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lanre. And I want to pay my deep respects to the elder sitting beside you. Good things sometimes come by accident. Here I am, 27 years of work in the real sector. And somehow, I decided I was going to pack up shop and transfer that learning to the consulting sphere. Why? Some bunch of consultants had come to us, and I looked at them and said, "Guy, you have no experience. You're just talking from paper knowledge. You don't know jack. So let's get out there, those of us who have the experience, and apply the cerebral power, put it into consulting." So here I am at Philips Consulting, and I'm working. A fellow associate director says to me, "Wanu, we're going to the summit." I'm like, "For what?" "Well, we're going to serve as rapporteurs to document everything that is happening and put them into a green book." I said, "Really?" So I said, "Okay, let's go." So I get to this place, and I'm seeing Elder Dotun and all of these people. At that time, Mansour was DG. And I'm sitting in the room and listening to economic ideas. Remember, I'm coming from the real sector where I really know the import of regulations, policies, how they can play a serious impact in your success as an organization. So I'm thinking, you mean there's an opportunity to make such a difference to how things are structured? Then I'm going to be a part. So I started at that low level. I'm sure a lot of people would have felt, oh, someone that had been managing director. I was managing director, personal products in UAC. I sat on the board of CAP PLC, name them. But I was quite comfortable just putting together these beautiful ideas that would make a huge difference on the economy, which, if that then happened, would deliver value to the common man. So now what's the journey? So from there, this Elder Dotun will come, and then I think he realized, no, this young lady comes with something. So he will say, "Which kind of secretary? You have already done the job, lead the meeting." And this was Human Capital Policy Commission, and then I would lead the meeting, and then suddenly I was dragged into technical committee. After technical committee, editorial committee. After editorial committee, I was dragged into the central organizing committee, where first I served as vice chair, and we're running all over the place, designing all of this and getting, people to come. That's the government. And of course, all of that culminated in one of the most powerful summits that we've had in terms of adoption. And I still remember sitting in that room, because we're working all night, and we said to a particular government that had failed to secure a third term, and he had just 6 months in office. And so we said, we are going to tell this man the baton must not drop. You remember? So that was the theme. And I stood here, I remember, with Abike Dabiri as we were making the presentation. "Mr. President, this baton must not drop. Your 6 months that you have left can make a difference to this economy." And for the first time, we're seeing a president put aside the paper that was drafted for him, and he gets up there and begins to dish out, "I will do this." Within 6 weeks of the summit, the education sector was changed. He just did a lot, and so much could be done. Now, that is just to encourage us, because people come and say, "Why do you do this?" We pay to serve. From the NESG, I've learned about selflessness. I've learned about patience. I've learned about resilience, because once upon a time we got those who are not willing to to cooperate. And you say, "You know what, let's throw this thing all in the air and let's, go adversarial." It doesn't work that way. Collaboration, working together, continuous conversations, and you begin to watch over the years, all these little drops of water, they've made a mighty ocean. Now, to the second question, which is about the policy commissions. People only see the glory, which is when we come to the summit and we're all gaily dressed and all of that. But the real work starts after the summit, because there is what we call policy commissions. We have about 12 of them right now. We're trying to prune them. What they do is to pull out all these lofty ideas that we have all conversed, whether the executive arm of government, legislative arm of government, judiciary arm of government, subnationals, national, up to local government, and then the private sector, civil society. We distill all of that, and each of these policy commissions will pick the relevant ones to where they are assigned, and then they begin to partner. Remember, we don't all only dialogue, we're also partners. So we go to the various ministries and the various departments to continue to partner with government to ensure over time these ideas, these policies that are being canvassed become implemented. And remember, as JOJ said, it has even gotten to a point where the NESG, in order to make available credible research for the work that is needed, sometimes we sponsor aids into each of these various offices in government just to assure that the implementation of these policies actually meet with the requirements of the economy. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to go around the panel very quickly. You mentioned the Green Book, again, for the benefit of those who may not know. We call it the Green Book, but it's basically the summary of the discussions and recommendations at the end of every summit. And that provides input into policy recommendations and provides input into the work of the policy commissions that Ms. Wano-Adetayo mentioned. But you see, I have also engaged with a lot of people who will say to me, if I don't see him in the room, but I met a gentleman who was at Summit 1. And he was at an event organized by the NESG, and he had his copy of Green Book number 1. The truth is, if you read that Green Book, and you read Green Book number 29, people will argue that, what are we talking about? We understand that reform is slow and painstaking. We understand the need for resilience, as you have mentioned. But I would like just to go around the panel. What are the big levers that this current administration needs to move? 1, 2, maximum 3 issues, in your view, to make meaningful impact in the lives of our people? I'll start with you, sir. Elder, as you put it.
I got a new name. I got a new name today. I'm not as old as I look. Oh.
With all that white.
Well, I would say, I mean, of course, Nigerians are very critical people for the right reasons, I must say. And the burden of leading this country is not an easy one. It's a tough one. I mean, you know, because so many issues, and some of them, they go way, way back. Like you said, if you read the first book and the 29th book, you start wondering, what have we been doing? I always remember my boss saying, that's Dick Kramer, that reform is not a 100 meters dash. It's a marathon. And therefore, that's why consistency, even if you have to say it again and again and again and again, it takes time, but eventually it finds answers, it gets done. So sometimes we underestimate the effort. We underestimate the complexity of the issues and how tough the challenges are, and of course the amount of courage and political power that you need to make some of these things happen, grossly underestimated. So, and I've seen it work. I mean, we talk about Vision 2010. It took us 2 years, this summit, to sell the idea of vision. Now, we take it for granted now, but it took 2 years. And I remember the second time I made the presentation here in this same hall, with Abuja sitting on that seat there, it almost cost me my life. Yeah, because I made a presentation where I said, long story short, leadership has failed Nigeria, and I thought I was, being personal and so on. So it requires courage, it requires consistency and so on. So talking about what needs to be done, what are the one big lever? I don't think there's any one big lever. I think what we need is a competitive economy. Whatever it is we need to do to remove all distortions, that affect the smooth and efficient running of the economy. Some of those steps have been done, or are being done, or in process of being done. Subsidies that are abused, exchange rate policies that are, kind of rigged, and of course, making Nigerians earn their worth, work for their money, getting value for money we spend, because there's a disconnect between the amount of money government spends on things and the value that the economy gets out of it. So those are the basic things we need to do, for me, in my own book anyway, is to create a competitive economy based on merit, and of course, making sure that we just hold our nerves. It's going to be tough, but it's never been easy. If it was easy, maybe we would have done it. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Engineer Mansour.
Well, thank you very much. I think I agree with Dr. that there's just no one lever that you can turn. But I think, in my view, there's one mindset that needs to be in the minds of our leaders, particularly our political leaders, that there is an interface between political processes and economic processes. It seems to me that in Nigeria, that interface has been pushed so hard that everything seems to be, funded on the basis of the political. We must recognize that sometimes where the economy or economic interest starts, political interest must stop. Because people must recognize that whereas politics is a question of sharing power, basically, whatever way you look at it, I'm not a politician, so I can say it. The economic process is a process of building prosperity. And nobody builds prosperity on his own. Nobody becomes wealthy or rich or prosperous on his own ground. There must be other people that work with him, that support him, that create that prosperity. So on the one hand, if we just place all our focus on politics, we are always going to be looking at processes that are divisive, because nobody wants to give power voluntarily. You have to take it from them, either through election or through some whatever means. But if we recognize that to build prosperity, we must stop looking at it at things from political angle, then I think we should expect a situation where a government comes in after the political process, after the struggle for power, to now face the economy for all of us. And it means, therefore, that that process must, as much as possible, be decoupled from the political process, so that we focus on the economy and build prosperity for all. Whatever the political differences, whatever other differences are, the economy must work for all of us. I believe that the more our leaders and leadership understands that, the more they try to inject that in our psyche, all of us, the more likely that we shall get the economic process working for all. And when it works for all, the political process becomes easier, because then the divisions are sort of if you like, conflicts are left at the level of the leadership, rather than the majority of the people. So my thinking is that we should push to see that we, if you like, identify points where we are dealing with the economy, we are dealing with the prosperity of the nation, and therefore we do less, conflict on economy, on political nature. That way, I think we're more likely to move forward and to implement all the recommendations without political connotations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mansour. Dr. Mogui.
Very good
Is there
question.
one big lever or no?
Well, I think what I'll do is build on what has been said, but what has always been at the back of my mind has been the fact that we're very divided. We're very divided. And when I talk about division, it's division at different levels. Division from a point of view of age. The way the young see things different from the way the old see things. Division in terms of ethnicity. Division in terms of religion. Even in the same Christianity, division. How we can have one common purpose that rallies us all around, from cradle to grave, that is on our minds, that this is where we want to go, this is our purpose as Nigerians, wherever we are, whether we're in Nigeria, whether we're outside Nigeria, that we are working towards that one purpose. If we can galvanize that, reinforce that over and over and over again, and then live by it, all our actions, what we do, so that even if administrations change, leaders change, we're united on that one purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jayola.
When General Abuja ran SAP, and SAP was bightening, I recall everybody said, let's give SAP a human face. And what he did was really to then open the floodgate. I recall CBN had to print money, a number of things came, and we just lost it from there. No true reforms does not have its price. And I want government to realize that, yes, they just need to make themselves believable. It's tough. And I'll tell people, the only way I can make myself believable is the way I lead my life. So if I ask somebody, tighten your belt, I must show that I am actually tightening my belt. Because this reform, we knew was going to bite all of us. I told somebody, I said, 2-3 years, we will face this wahala. But one thing I want government to do is the government to leave the reforms. Just leave it. Show it, display it. When we need to cut costs, let's cut it. That's one thing I will say we need to do so that people believe us. The second thing that is close to that is that, politicians, they have not finished one term. Everybody is thinking about second term. Let's just do what we need to do in this one term and do it well. And if we get the desired result, Nigerians will bring you back. But we worry about the next time. Let's be focused and let's drive it. Those are the things I would say.
Mrs. Adetayo.
Well, thank you very much. Sincerely, I am in total agreement that there's no one single lever, but a few that can make a huge difference. And I want to speak to an area that we haven't spoken about, at least at this forum, and that's the MSMEs. If enablers can be put in place to literally use the MSMEs to catalyze the economy in such a manner that, because right now, over 80% of employment is coming from that sector, and they're not getting the adequate attention that it requires. So that's one. Second, I think, is tackling food security. There is acute shortage, and it's going to be hitting us in the face very soon. I tried to, it looks like a joke, but it's real. Just 2 days ago, I'm trying to get hold of guinea fowl. We couldn't find guinea fowl, not one piece in the whole of Surulere. And then I asked my driver, okay, go to mile 12. In the entire market, there was none. And they said simply, one vehicle broke down on the way, and therefore come back tomorrow for a single guinea fowl. So huge food security issues are looming. So if effort is made that we can at least ensure that there's food security, and that can only start if the insecurity that drove people away is tackled. And I think the last one that I'd like to add is a sense of urgency. You know, Georgie was talking about, you know, walk the talk. What we want to see is a huge sense of urgency, because sincerely, we seem to be on an express road to a looming disaster, and nobody seems to be showing that there's disaster looming. But I want to believe that as we all collaborate, work together, and, you know, continue to advocate what is right, then as I mentioned this morning, the future is indeed colorful and it's bright. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Quite a lot to unpack there. I'm hearing, you know, to improve the competitiveness of the local economy. That's from Mr. Suleiman. And, you know, value for money for the people in terms of, you know, let the spend, the fiscal spend, trickle down to the man on the street. And gentlemen, so you said that, you know, we need to, particularly the political class, to separate the politics from the economy so we can deliver prosperity for everyone. Yeah. And when you deliver prosperity for everyone, then of course, naturally, you have a better country. Then you can deal with your politics. Unity of purpose, I think that's my summary from Dr. Ufweko. You might have heard Mr. Adesayo say JOJ. That's another name for Mr. Larry Jayola. So we call him JOJ sometimes. Basically, sir, my summary of what you said is leadership by example. That's a simple summary. Walk the talk, lead by example, focus on governance, not about the next term. Reform is tough, yes, and I believe Nigerians can brace, you know, we are very resilient people. Nigerians can brace themselves, but the signal from the leadership is also very important. Mrs. Aditayo, you were very prescriptive in terms of specifics. Focus on MSMEs, food security, the insecurity challenge that is causing food insecurity, and then overall, there must be a sense of urgency. Create a burning platform. It's not business as usual. Thank you very much. This has been a very, very interesting discussion. A round of applause, please, for our panelists. Do we have questions from the audience or comments? Okay, I see just one hand. So, yes, sir.
There's supposed to be somebody to give him a mic.
Oh, okay. Now there are a few hands. Please be easy on us. There's no policymaker here. There's nobody.
There is. The Honorable Minister, has he stepped out?
No. I mean on this stage.
Oh, okay.
We are just here to discuss as ordinary Nigerians.
Our distinguished and eminent elders, founders of NESG, I want to recognize our elder, my chairman, who said he's got a new title, but he's an elder statesman in Nigeria by any means. I have also got another chairman by his side, Engineer Mazur, who happened to have mentored me also, and the distinguished gentleman. I want to say the question you asked, I have a different answer, and I had said it in this hall. By the way, I have had the privilege of being on the NESG for well over 20 years. If you like, almost 25 years, active. I had at different times been a member of the Joint Planning Committee. I was chairman of Policy Commission. I was a facilitator. I was in the Red Eye Committee, Madam, the editing committee where when the summit begins, for 3 days we do not sleep. So glory of God, I've had all this experience, and some of the points mentioned here have been mentioned roundly. I want to say the point that I differ with my elders here. I have mentioned it here about 5 or 6 years ago, and that is the solution is for the private sector to appreciate that it is the principal driver. We can do it if we continue to beg government, say we want government to do this, we remain beggarly. I believe if we constitute ourselves, as we have started, NESG has achieved quite a lot through diplomacy, but I believe the private sector as a whole, constituting itself as a real pressure group, once it raises anything and puts it on the platform, it can happen. As long as we are going to be beggarly, it will be sad. You will sometimes get some and lose some. If we have had that strength of being a pressure group, I assure you what NSG has achieved now is not more than 15–20% of what it could have achieved.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I think I'll just take 2 more because I'm really now mindful of time. The gentleman at the front in the cream suit.
Well, I think mine is just to also add my voice that the Nigeria Economic Society Group, Summit Group, has actually come of age. And I did a reflection today to look at NESG at 30. And what came out is that I say that contrary to the view of the 44th American president, the Africans should build strong institutions, not strong individuals. I think NSD has shown that you can't have strong institutions without strong men and women. And I think today it's good to remember the late elder statesman Ame Joda, Pascal Edozie. Of course, NS Shoneka may still rest in peace. I mean, it takes a lot, to really consistently for the past 30 years, to bring NSG to this level. But I'm just provoked to make 1 or 2 comments after listening to our elder statesman, Dr. Suleiman. And I agree with you, you are very upbeat that NSG has achieved so much. But when we look at the numbers today, I think we should continue the conversation. With 32% headline inflation rate, even though marginal decline of 1.5% compared to the same period last year. And with Naira exchanging for as much as 1,600 for dollars. I think NSG, we should ask ourselves that when NSG started in 1995, what were the numbers? What were the numbers? So I think, Mr. Jayola, you have done so much to bring some of us on board. I also know Dick Kramer. I used to represent Comrade Adams, on the platform of labor when we were engaging in those days. I think it's time for the NSG to review its foundational principles of market fundamentalism. I think it is clear that market is very, very important. Market philosophy, market will produce goods and services, but market will not function without collaboration with the state, with the government. And I'm happy that the team this year is about collaborative action. I think for a long time, NSG has done so much to be less constructive with governance, such that those in government truly believe that government has no business in business. I'm asking now, in 1993, I think Dr. Masri, you are here, we are together in Kaduna. Where are all those textile factories? You know, that were in Bompai, in Kano, in Kakuri. In fact, Aliko Dangote actually started from textile. And it was based on the idea that government has no business. You need to liberalize, open your trade. You know, you need to allow, and the country was full of dump goods and coal. Mr. Taiwo, you are here talking of reforms for taxation, but what is the base? What are you going to tax where most of the factories are gone, where most of the workers have no job? So what I'm saying in summary is that at 30, I think it's time for NSG to also look at age of its ideas. Not just your age of your ideas. And we can learn from developing countries like China, like Indonesia, emerging economies like Russia. It's not wholesale market dogma. You know, you need to have mix of both the state and the market. And we have seen it, what is happening now in the petroleum downstream sector. It is that constructive collaboration between private sector in the areas of refineries and together with the state that is now producing what is possibly will be the way out of the crisis we're having in the downstream petroleum sector. So all that I'm saying is that I want to congratulate NESG at 30, but we should move from Tina. There's no alternative. I learned of that concept here. You know, you remember Tina. Even for Tina, you can have Ngozi, you can have Iyabo, you can have. There are many roads to the market. So NSG, please move from orthodoxy of the market to heterodoxy of different views and ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, one last question or comment. The lady at the far back, she stood up a second ago. Just one, I'm completely out of time. Please, can you limit your contribution, please, to a maximum of 1 minute, if you can, please.
Thank you so much.
Please, 1 minute. No, the lady at the she was.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone that has sort of set the stage to have this conversation. I mean, it's not easy to constantly come back and keep having the standard of pulling people together. Mine is just short. And I was thinking that, the speaker before me was going to hit on it, but I would just add slightly. NESG has done so much, but clearly there's still something very wrong going on. And so it might not necessarily be the ideas or the age of ideas, because I think that NESG is constantly involving young people and bringing in new solutions. There might just be something fundamentally wrong around how people get the job done. And so as a country, why are we regressing? Why are we not taking in all this work that is being already done by institutions like NESG? How can we tell ourselves the truth as people and say, okay, some people are already doing the work. Let's just like Mr. Jayola said, let's just do what we need to do and get this ship moving, right? That's what I'm saying. Can we just review it and figure out what exactly is that problem that is holding Nigeria back? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I have just about a minute to spare. There's a lady who got up at the far back. Could you please, can you, yes. I think I'll just take her and we'll close this session. Yes, the lady standing.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, my name is Cynthia Obiora, and this is my first time to NES Summit. I have been listening to this. I've read some literatures of the past, but there's so much that you have done, but have we acted on all of it? I think we should now leave from too much talk to doing, to monitoring, to reviewing, and then take it off from there. It's too many things. We have a lot of ingredients. Let's move to cooking the food. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On that note, thank you very much. Let me just quickly say here that the NESG is recruiting volunteers.
Exactly.
Yes. We are always on the lookout for volunteers. The only condition of service is this. You have to be ready to pay to serve. That was the first thing I heard, and that's the same song I've been hearing for maybe 15 years now.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. It's been a very enlightening and lively discussion. Enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.
It would have been nice to have a photograph of these amazing people. The decision to bring them on stage was done in less than 5 minutes, and see what they delivered. They kept us engaged for 1.5 hours. Lanre, that was super. Thank you very much. Thank you.